back to coverage of GP Memphis. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Reed Duke, and we're ready for quarterfinal action where we have Eric Froelich playing against Tyler Schrader. And Eric on blue-black control, he's going to be facing against the red-green monsters of Tyler. Now, Eric, definitely the biggest name in our top 8. He's in the Hall of Fame for the Pro Tour, and he's the most accomplished player in our top 8. But what's the matchup like if you're sitting in Eric's seat playing against Tyler, who's kicking things off with Merfolk Branchwalker here?
I'm going to be honest with you, Marshall. I think Eric Froelich drew one of his tougher matchups in the top 8 with red-green monsters. The blue-black control deck going to excel in sort of the pseudo-mirrors against Grixis, where it can go a little larger, have a little more card advantage. But this red-green monsters deck is focused mostly on threats, not on answers. And a lot of these threats are pretty resilient, like the Merfolk Branchwalker and the Jadelight Ranger. Those are going to demand removal from Eric's blue-black control decks, but they also give Tyler value in getting to explore.
And right away, Eric, who came ready for the fight against Mono Red, it looks like he's got Moment of Craving in the main deck, and he's going to use one to kill the Merfolk Branchwalker right now. Now, the card revealed was a Rekindling Phoenix to that Branchwalker, and so Tyler will have drawn that here. Oh, boy.
Struggles to survive. I'm going to guess that's going to the graveyard.
Yep.
But that's relevant for later. The survive half of that can be used if he needs to reduce the impact of a Torrential Gearhulk or a Scarab God. He can use the Aftermath mode.
Really great effect there for Tyler. He got the +1/+1 counter, cleared off the struggle, which he does not want to have in his hand, and gets to use survive later in the game. That was pretty beautiful. And I don't know if you saw that, Reed, but it was Rekindling Phoenix that he has again.
Yeah, so now Eric Froelich knows that even in, he's going to be facing down back-to-back Rekindling Phoenixes, if not something even worse than that.
This is not good news for Eric. He just put Vraska's Contempt in his graveyard off of Search for Azcanta. That almost for sure means that he's searching for lands, because he'd love to draw a Vraska's Contempt if he could cast it. And sure enough, no land drop for Froelich, and this could be a very quick game number 1.
Yeah, torturous here, because Vraska's Contempt is the single card that Eric Froelich needs most to deal with the 2 Rekindling Phoenixes, but he has to put it in the graveyard looking for a 4th land to cast the one that's already in his hand.
Super heartbreaking stuff for Eric. And Tyler, he's like, this is going great. Everything's coming up Tyler.
Doesn't even have a counter spell for that second Phoenix.
No. Really tough to come back from this spot. I mean, first things first, Eric must hit a land drop. I would assume it's going to have to be an untapped land at this point as well. And he has to start killing these threats. But even if he does, it was a land. Is it too late? It feels like it is.
Yeah, and part of the problem that's changing the equation is the Hush Up Oasis. Hypothetically, if Eric could cast 2 back-to-back Vraska's Contempts, and Tyler didn't add anything else to the battlefield, Eric could survive, but just a single activation of the Hush Up Oasis will change that math.
4, 8, dead.
So Eric should be up to 12 here. He's going to get knocked down to 4. Another Vraska's Contempt could deal with one of these threats, put him up to 6, but then just on the board, Tyler can still attack for 7 points.
I saw that Eric has Commit to Memory in his hand. So it just feels like these answers are too slow at this point.
Yeah, in a way, Commit Memory sort of Vraska's Contempt number 5 and 6, but a lot weaker here, as both he won't be gaining that crucial 2 life, and he'll have to contend with the threat again just a few turns later. I think Schrader's contemplating using the Hush Up Oasis this turn.
To get Eric to 1? That's what he's going to do.
So Froelich will need to answer both threats somehow, based on the fact that he was unable to answer any at 3 mana 2 turns ago. It seems like a tall order.
Yeah, he puts a commit in the graveyard, and I don't think there's a combination necessarily here. Right? I'm sure there's something, but he has to kill both creatures or gain a bunch of life or...
Oh, actually, it is possible now with Field of Ruin. If he has 2 fatal pushes,
yes, that is
survive.
True.
Nope,
he's just going to scoop him up. So Tyler Schroeder wins game number 1. Easy game for him.
Yeah, and look,
he cruised to the finish.
One of the absolute strengths of a deck like Tyler's is the ability to punish an opponent so badly if they miss a beat. And for Eric, it was missing that 4th land drop, and the hard-hitting threats of Tyler Schrader just demolished him.
So Tyler says, that's exactly how I drew it up when I brought this deck to the tournament. Just smash a Hall of Famer in an easy game number 1, but he's got to win at least one more of the next 2 games if he's going to get by Eric, and Eric is a tough customer. He will also be on the play next time. Now, the players are looking at deck lists and going to start crafting a game plan for what they know of the main deck plus what they predict may come in from the board and out on the main. What's your take on these on the sideboard plan here, Reed?
Well, the single most potent sideboard card on either side of the matchup is going to be down there on the bottom row, Tyler Schrader's 2 copies of Carnage Tyrant, uncounterable, untargetable by cards like Vraska's Contempt. That is an absolute nightmare for the blue-black control deck to deal with. And especially when paired with the 8 Explore creatures, Tyler has a great chance of being able to hit his land drops and play that Carnage Tyrant on time or close to on time. It's going to be a big headache for Eric Froelich. 2 copies of Chandra Torch of Defiance, adding extra potent threats, and potentially he might swap some of his cheaper removal for a 3rd Struggle Survives, give him a better game against the Scarab God.
Magma Sprays don't look super hot here.
I agree, yeah. Struggle Survive, a much better version of Magma Spray. Not completely out of the question to keep a Magma Spray as a way to, combine with another card to get rid of a Scarab God, but it's not going to be a top priority.
What about the Earthshaker Kenras in the upper right? Are those just a key part of the curve that he needs to keep in, or is he really going to shift his power level upwards?
I think the Kenras are fine because you get a huge benefit if you can slip in underneath the permission spells of the blue-black control deck. Eric's definitely going to be turning to Essence Scatter and Disallow to beat the Rekindling Phoenixes and the Glory Bringers. But if you can put his back against the wall by getting a creature in underneath those, it makes it either impossible or at least very painful for Eric to continue passing with open mana.
Okay. Let's take a look at Eric's sideboard here. Now, what can he do against some of these new threats that he knows are going to be coming in? Specifically, does he have really any way to interact with Carney T?
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to get much better for Eric after sideboarding, and that's another strength of the Monsters deck, is it's not some one-dimensional weenie aggro deck where you can just say, all right, I'm going to take out all my slow cards and bring in all my cheap removal. It's a powerful deck, so you need to maintain enough concentration of stuff like Scarab God, Glimmer of Genius, Torrential Gearhulk to make sure you can actually overpower them in the late game while also being prepared for the quick rush, for the high-impact mid-game threats. So Froelich, I mean, he's a lot of options that he can look to in his sideboard. I think the Bantu's Last Reckoning is certainly going to have to come in as a way to defend against Carnage Tyrant, but other than that, I don't know, he might diversify a little bit with one of Negate, one of Duress, things like that, but really he doesn't have much room to improve.
Yeah, sometimes we see these blue-black decks have those Death Touchers. Cards like Gifted Etherborn.
Yep.
But
Contraband Kingpin might still come in for Eric as a roadblock against the cheap creatures of Tyler, with the logic like, okay, if I can use a creature to stop the early threats, then I can focus my removal spells on the bigger stuff. But yeah, if he had chosen Gifted Etherborn instead of Contraband Kingpin, it would have been a lot more potent as an answer to Carnage Tyrant.
Wow. It is incredible how threat dense the Monsters deck is. It just doesn't give you a break.
Yeah, it's going to get even tougher after sideboard as Tyler is going to take out some of those Abrades and Magma Sprays for just more threats.
Right. You know, we were kind of going down the list on, well, what does Tyler want to take out? And, you know, one of the cards that we saw was the Earthshaker Kenra. But even that, you mentioned the first half can get underneath the counterspell perhaps and start getting turned sideways. But if Eric does, in fact, commit some type of removal spell to it, it still just comes back on its own.
It's true, Marshall. One of the
It's just
traditional weaknesses of the Monster's broad archetype over the history of Magic is, you can get mana flooded because you have to play enough mana sources to cast your big expensive cards, but you don't really have ways to smooth your draw. You don't have card drawing. So, if your first Glorybringer or two get answered, you might flood out. Not the case with Tyler's deck because he's going to be able to look down in his graveyard and have either or both of his Kenras, the Earthshaker Kenra or the Resilient Kenra, and it's very likely he's going to have something potent to spend his mana on every single turn of the game, starting on turn 4, 5, 6.
All right. A tough hill to climb for Eric Froelich if he's going to win back-to-back games. Tyler is just like, come on, give me that good draw. Let's get by this Hall of Famer. No, he's going to have to take a mulligan, it looks like.
Mulligan on the draw, not the worst thing. Tyler will be looking to resolve something like a Jade Light Ranger to try to recoup being down a resource to start the game. We'll see how much Eric prioritizes countering those Explore creatures early on, or whether he wants to save his Essence Scatters and disallows for the 4 and 5 mana plays.
All right, 6 cards here for Tyler. See if he's got a keeper here. Yes, he does indeed. All right, so not a disaster for Tyler. He's on the draw anyway, so cards-wise, he could still be right in this. Mountain go after a Drowned Catacomb from Froelich. Oop, second Drowned Catacomb for Eric, representing a fatal push as he passes the turn back to Tyler.
Marshall, we mentioned Eric Froelich's very long list of accomplishments on the Grand Prix circuit, something like 13 previous Grand Prix top 8s. Chat can fact check me on that, but this is actually only his second standard top 8. Definitely much more of an accomplished player in limited teams, things like that. But his last standard top 8 was Red-Black Devotion in the days of Theros.
Well, that was a while ago. All right, here we go. Earthshaker Kenra, the card that we talked about earlier. Does Eric have an answer for it? Yes, he has Moment of Craving.
And Eric missing his third land drop again, having trouble.
Oh, boy. That is no good for Eric Froelich. He's going to need to start hitting these land drops, and he can't find one off the top. Running terrible. Tyler's going to go for Chandra. Does it resolve? Eric's going to need a negate.
Yeah.
Maybe a Censor if he plays this? No, he doesn't have it.
The nightmare scenario for Eric Froelich. He can't remove the Chandra for less than 4 mana. He's having trouble hitting his land drops. This is going to hurt.
I mean, that could be game. Right? I mean, an unchecked Chandra for 2 to 3 turns while Tyler gets to still build out his board and put pressure on Eric. How is he going to recover from that?
Yeah, this is one of those situations where you start thinking in terms of very unlikely outcomes. Like, okay, if Tyler doesn't have anything in his hand, his Chandra bricks, and I'm able to remove it and get a window, then I can claw back in. But, realistically, if the cards come off the top in a normal distribution from here, there's just no way the blue-black control deck can compete with an unchecked Chandra.
And Chandra ticks ever upwards now on 7 loyalty, Reed.
One thing that Eric Froelich can hope for is if Tyler goes for the emblem and he's able to disallow it, that is effectively a way to remove the Chandra, but it requires Tyler Schrader to make a somewhat risky play. It's possible it will happen. I know from experience, like the first time that you have your Planeswalker emblem disallowed can be a surprise. So if Tyler has not had that play pattern come up, he might just go ahead and go for it. You're used to basically winning the game on the spot when you untap with a Chandra on 7. We'll see exactly how these two players navigate it.
Smart play by Tyler. He's going to use Eternalize here, an effect that Eric Doesn't have, he's had in his hand an Essence Scatter. Can't do anything about it, though. And another missed land drop from Froelich, and this one has completely fallen apart on him. He's now facing down a 4-power creature, a Planeswalker that, if Tyler wanted, could go ultimate here. Though he's going to go for it. Oh, and the disallow does hit it. And look, you saw his face there. I don't think he saw that coming.
Wow.
This is a small window for Eric Froelich to try to come back, but it's going to require effectively Tyler to be completely out of gas at this point.
Okay, I like Tyler here. He was about to go attack with his Kenra, perhaps a little jilted by what had happened, but now he's slowing down. He's taking his time. He's not going to let himself compound the mistake, and he's gonna think about what to do before he attacks. One great option is to unearth the Resilient Kenra and attack for 8, putting Eric down to 4 with 2 4-power threats still on the battlefield.
Yes, and he sees that exact line. Resilient Kenra, the green version, is going to pump +4 here on its cousin, the Earthshaker Kenra. Finally land number 4 from Froelich, but it looks like it's too late.
Well, Vraska's Contempt can allow Eric to survive even in the face of Hush Up Oasis, since Tyler would have to commit the Oasis before attackers.
Let's see if Eric has it. We know he has commit in hand, but there it is. Vraska's Contempt. But Tyler just says, I've got the win here. I've got a Chandra plus it. And that's going to be it. A tough loss there for Eric Froelich and a great win for Tyler Schrader. He's going to move into the semifinals, winning 2 pretty uncontested games there in his quarterfinal match.
Yeah, he dispatched the most accomplished player in the top 8 relatively easily there. I mean, of course, Eric had bad draws. He missed land drops at the wrong time, but that is the very punishing aspect of the Red-Green Monsters deck. You don't give your opponent any breathing room.
That's right, and you do have to make sure to give credit where credit's due when it comes to decks like that, because there are matchups where Eric could miss a couple of land drops in the early part of the game and not just be dead, right? He might have a chance to come back or do something, but instead, Tyler's deck just slams the door. And you can see he's pretty happy about it too. Okay, so let's jump over and we're going to see Hunter Cochran versus Blake Miller as we join this quarterfinal match. Hunter Cochran's up a game. Looking pretty good here. He's the only one with a board state.
Yeah, Blake Miller, so our top seed with Mardu Vehicles, he did great in the Swiss, but looks like he's facing down a situation that he's not happy with against a Whirler Virtuoso. The single hard-hitting threats of Mardu Vehicles are going to have a tough time fighting through the army of chump blockers and the Thopter tokens, and that's even in the good-case scenario where Blake Miller can get a threat into play. So he's got a lot of work to do if he's going to claw back in Game 2 here and bring it to a decider.
Yeah, he's really not drawing the things that he wants to draw at this point. It was back-to-back duresses when he was behind on board. Hunter Smart just uses it to cash in 3 energy.
Yep. So the player's shortcutting there. Hunter indicated that he was responding to the duress, even though he didn't tap his lands, but he just banked the 3 energy and made a Thopter with the Whirler Virtuoso.
And all of a sudden, he's just crushing this race quite easily, and he's maybe a few attack steps away from being in the semis. Blake just can't seem to get anything going on his side. I mean, he's supposed to have a big board state, be attacking with some vehicles or some creatures down on the ground. He just has nothing going.
Mardu Vehicles, the deck in the format with potentially the most punishing early game curve outs, but not one of the decks with a great ability to come back from behind once it gets to this stage.
Hunter Cochran.
Oh, and you see something going on here with Blake Miller. He has no white mana. No artifact means no Spire of Industry tapping for any color. He's got a Toolcraft Exemplar just embarrassingly sitting in his hand at this late stage.
Oh my god, he has 6 lands and he can't make white mana? What a beating. Oh, this is not good news. And that's game. Hunter Cochran says, I got the removal spell. You can't block me. I got enough to kill you right here. And that's going to do it. 2-0 for that quarterfinal match. So that's Hunter Cochran. He moves through. So he's in.
So far we know about Hunter Cochran with Grixis Energy and Tyler Schrader with Red-Green Monsters. Those 2 players are on opposite sides of the bracket, so they will not be meeting until the finals, if they can make it that far.
That's right. So we have 1 player on each half of the bracket move through. Matt Kling versus Andrew Tenjum. What are they doing here? We are finishing a game? Maybe just mulliganing? Finishing a game.
All right, and it's Matt Kling's game. He won the first one.
Yeah,
up 1-0 in the Grixis Energy mirror.
So this is the mirror match you said, Reed?
Yeah, Grixis Energy mirror, although, as we mentioned, Grixis Energy, an extremely customizable mid-range deck. So these players have both been able to sort of make it their own with their particulars of card choice. Here we have Matthew Kling's Grixis Energy deck on the screen. Some of his unique card choices: Direfleet, Daredevil, 2 Confiscation Coups in the main deck. I have to say I love that. I feel like Confiscation Coup is one of the more underappreciated cards in Standard and one of the cards that really made Teamer Energy pretty hard to beat in the old days.
That's interesting.
Matthew Kling preserving that strength in his Grixis deck here.
No, that's really interesting because one common thread that you and I have had over the course of the weekend is how most of the players have clearly had an emphasis on exile, removal that exiles the opponents. Well, what's better than that?
That's right.
Steal it.
Yeah, Confiscation Coup is excellent against Rekindling Phoenix.
That is sweet.
If you steal your opponent's Phoenix, it will be you that gets the 0/1 elemental token, not the opponent.
If the Phoenix were to die.
That's right.
So even though that means you don't get their Phoenix back, but they don't either.
Right. So you eliminate the Phoenix completely in the sense that you don't have to worry about your opponent getting that persistent 0/1 token, and you even get a nice jump blocker out of the deal.
Get spotted a freebie. Wow. Yeah, I like that. Confiscation Coup. That is nice.
So as always, we see a nice variety of removal spells. 4 Vraska's Contempt, 4 Harness Lightning. That's been pretty popular. And then 3 Magma Spray, 1 Abrade is Matthew Kling's choice in the main deck.
That to me seems to be the biggest factor here when it comes to the sideboarding that the players are doing right now as we speak is what kind of deck can I expect from my opponent? Because let's take a look at Andrew Tenjum's list as well. It looks like you can move around quite a bit. Look at the sideboard for Andrew. It's a lot of control stuff, right? Planeswalkers, counter spells, more removal, more card draw, duress, right? It's all answers and ways to get ahead as a control deck. They could easily transform this deck by taking out the glint sleeve siphoners or whatever, make it so that you don't have a lot of targets, and instead you're playing against what looks more like a traditional Grixis control deck. And if you bring in the wrong answers, you could be in big trouble.
Right, that customizability that begins at home when you're building your deck, writing up your deck list to register in the tournament, but it continues as you sideboard on the fly in these matchups. And even though the players have one another's deck lists, it's not guaranteed that they're gonna be sure what the opponent's configuration after sideboard is going to be. The big difference between these two lists, and I think one that's going to give Andrew Tenjum a slight edge in the matchup, is that he's a little more slanted towards control. 2 copies of Torrential Gearhulk to Matthew Kling's 1, 2 Search for Azcanta in the main deck, and these 2 Glimmer of Geniuses coming in almost certainly to pair with the Torrential Gearhulks for a long-term advantage.
All right, players examining their opening hands here for game number 2. That's right, we're only headed into game number 2 on this one. We've already seen 2 matches finish. So that one looked like it ended up being a bit of a grind fest between these two.
So the fact that this is a mirror match and the fact that Hunter Cochran has already advanced means we're going to have, for sure, 2 Grixis Energy in our top 4.
A little bit of a shortcut there for Matt Kling, but he does actually get both energy, one from the hub One from the Siphoner. And Ender Tenjum says, well, I better answer that. What do you got? There it is. Harness Lightning. Do 1 to that. I'll net 2 energy. Your move. So a pretty typical opener here for this type of matchup. Somebody plays a threat. The other person has the answer. What we're really going to want to pay attention to is when the dust settles on this type of early exchange. Ooh, a duress early from Matt Kling. And he's going to see 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt, a Glimmer of Genius, and a Negate.
I'd be taking that Glimmer of Genius as quick as possible here.
You do it quickly?
Well, I guess I would know quickly that that's what I'm going to take. I wouldn't necessarily make the movement quickly.
Would you write down every card that your opponent had?
Yeah.
For the island, what would you write?
I just write
I.
For basics. I just write the first letter, big capital I.
Thought you were that kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be a U or an I?
I.
Okay, interesting.
U stands for blue. I stands for island.
Understood. And by the way, Matt came to the same conclusion you did, Reed. He said, I'd like to take away your Glimmer of Genius, and then he's going to pass the turn back after playing a Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
So you're seeing both players
do
these energy shortcuts. For example, Matt Kling had to tap an Ether Hub and spend an energy, but he got one when he resolved the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, so he just didn't change his die at all there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if you were sitting right next to them in the feature match area, you would hear them verbalizing these things as well, just to be clear to their opponents. It's just, of course, we're 100 feet away. So.
Well, actually, looks like it's not clear because the players are double-checking, make sure everything is as it should be.
Ooh, this is a nice opening to resolve a potent 4-drop, and Gonti, Lord of Luxury it is for Matt Kling. Let's see if he can hit something sweet. It's the kind of card you can get a real advantage from. Relatively ignorable on the ground as just a 2-powered attacker. Andrew can take some hits from that and not really worry about it, but you're getting that card either way. Land go from Tenjum.
What I'm going to be curious about is how much, if any, permission spells these players left in against one another. Negate in particular is one that seems a little dicey. It's strong against some of the middle game plays, like those Glimmer of Geniuses and those Vraska's Contempts, but it doesn't get the Scarab God and Torrential Gearhulk, so I wonder if the players will be turning to Negate.
Yeah, he could certainly use one right now, but it looks like Chandra has resolved. Wow. Matt Kling just with the back-to-back 4-drops resolving? Okay, cancel that order. That is Vraska's Contempt to take Chandra out to the cleaners. Gain a couple of life back from Andrew. For Andrew. Andrew's just going to draw his card and pass the turn back. Looks like no land drop this time either. And Gonti's going to start doing his thing, though. This clock is a bit of a slog. Taking Andrew from 20 to 18. It's going to take a while. He's going to need a little bit more backup than just Gonti. There's another Glint Sleeve Siphoner. 3 energy in the bank there for Andrew Tenjum, but nope, it's going to get exiled. Magnum Spray takes care of that little problem. And we still see this pretty similar situation here as before, Reed. They're kind of exchanging jabs here, right? You get in a little hit. Okay, well, I'll take that back out. All right, I'll resolve this. Well, it's dead before I even untap.
Yeah, the hero of this game so far has been that duress from Matt Kling, because if Andrew Tenjum had resolved Glimmer of Genius, not only would it be a 2-for-1, but it would get him a little bit more velocity in terms of finding proactive plays. And I actually see that he's picked up the Torrential Gearhulk, which he would very likely have his 6th land for if he had resolved the Glimmer. But similarly, Gonti, we haven't seen what Matt Kling put in the bank underneath that Gonti, but that is a card that represents a 2-for-1 advantage, and it's also been a nice onboard advantage, chipping away at Tenjum's life total.
Yeah, you know, he's gotten in there for 6 now, and Matt's content to just keep playing the land here, passing the turn back, but we're going to see Harness Lightning for Tenjum. He just doesn't want to keep taking the 2. Matt still gets to have access to that card, so it's not an amazing play from Tenjum's perspective, but he doesn't want to take 2 forever. And he also knows, hey, if I do get a Torrential Gearhulk down, I want to be able to start attacking with it, not trade it off for Gonti. Another glint sleeve siphoner. These have, well, none of them have survived to their owner's untap step thus far. Oh. Direfleet Daredevil's going to get met with an Essence Scatter. Nice play from Tenjum. Defense a little 2-for-1 there.
So Tenjum did leave Essence Scatter in the deck. Of course, Permission Spell being a bit situational, you got to have it in the right window against the right threat, but since it is a great answer to Scarab God and Torrential Gearhulk, it makes sense that he would leave it in.
There's another one. Tenjum's down to just 1 mana. He says, okay, you did it. And once again, the Siphoner not going to survive. Matt Kling with the pair of the Direfleet Daredevils. Second one gets the job done. There's land number 6, though. Oh, and the graveyard check. Matt Kling's going to be like, oh, that's going to be a Gearhulk every time. And in fact, it is. And there's that Glimmer of Genius. Matt Kling took the first half of it away by duressing it, but Andrew Tenjum's still going to get his value. Play a Glimmer of Genius out of his graveyard for free. He scried both to the bottom, I believe. Pass turn back to Matt Kling.
Matt Kling, this is really his crucial turn. He's got to make something big happen this turn. Oh, wow.
Wow. That's what he hit off of Gonti?
Yep, that's a Liliana Death's Majesty off the sideboard for Andrew Tenjum.
Oh, boy. Looks like he's going to start plussing Liliana. He's going to get him zombies. And Andrew does have his work cut out for him. Sigh of relief for Matt Kling. Andrew quickly taps 2 mana, but it's just to cycle Fetid Pools. He may be able to protect Liliana for the foreseeable future here.
Wow, so a big swing in getting to on top with the Planeswalker here. Now, Matt Kling can use Liliana's -3 for a variety of pretty nice effects here. He can return the Scarab God, which he had milled last turn with Liliana's +1 ability. He can return a Direfleet Daredevil if there's a juicy instant that he'd like. He can get a Gonti. Looks like the Scarab God, yeah, it looks pretty awesome here. The fact that you get to put it into play with all your mana untapped.
That's
just
unreal.
Outrageous.
That is absurd. Now, he has 7 mana available, so only 1 activation, but goodness sakes.
And he also knows that Tenjum doesn't have Vraska's Contempt. Surely he would have used it on the Liliana. Bad news for Andrew Tenjum.
Yeah, I mean, he may be able to find one, but he needs 2. He's got to deal with Liliana and the Scarab God. Matt sitting there with the activation available for Scarab God. This is going to be really tough for Tenjum to get out of this mess. Matt Kling with perhaps his most powerful card, the Scarab God, plus he has Liliana.
So here comes potentially Gonti.
Attention please, copper players. Pairings are posted for the ultimate round. Once again, copper players. Pairings are up.
Yep, it is Gonti. In fact, that he gets back. And Andrew's going to respond by casting Supreme Will for, we call it the impulse side of it. He's going to look at the top 4 cards. He gets to take one of those and put it into his hand. The rest go on the bottom of his library. Digging for, I don't know what. That was a pretty quick decision from Matt Kling. And he's just going to trade off Gonti on the ground. So a really advantageous transaction there for Matt. Gets rid of the Torrential Gearhulk, has a card left over that he can use to get value, and still gets to untap with Planeswalker and the Scarab God. This one has really fallen apart on Andrew Tenjum. The amount of card advantage that Matt Kling stands to gain turn after turn now is through the roof. I'm not seeing how Andrew Tenjum can fight this with no board state.
No, I mean, step one is he's got to get that Scarab God out of here. Step two, he's probably got to get that Liliana out of here, and then he's got to work on developing his own board and coming up with something that can win the game.
It's a tall order, to say the least.
I did see that he picked his own Scarab God off of that Supreme Will, so hypothetically, if he can find a way to answer Matt Kling's no.
Nope. That is going to do it. Matt Kling. Make sure that he gets the right cards back to Andrew. Looks like they have the same sleeves. But he's going to find himself in the semifinals here, winning the Grixis Energy Mirror against Andrew Tenjum and advancing. And that's our third spot.
So Matt Kling, with his Grixis Energy deck, will be taking on Tyler Schrader and the Red-Green Monsters deck that we saw eliminate
correct.
Eric Froelich just a few minutes ago.
And welcome back to the booth here at GP Memphis. That's Reed Duke. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. Thanks so much for coming along for Standard this weekend. It's been a fun one. We've had post-bannings, some new cards out there, and some new looks at some new decks, but also some fresh looks at some of the old standbys and to see how they've adjusted to the new card pool. Let's take a look at the bracket. Set the stage for us here. All right, our last result, Aaron Barich in the middle. That's that Sultai Constrictor deck that we saw on camera earlier, Reed. That one has now advanced. So the matchups for the semifinals break down like this. Hunter Cochran on the top. He's playing Grixis Energy. He's going to be playing against Aaron on that Sultai Constrictor deck. Down on the bottom part, though, we've got Tyler Schrader, and Tyler's on Red-Green Monsters playing against another Grixis Energy deck in the hands of Matt Kling, the one that we just watched. So Grixis Energy so far the real winner of the tournament, at least in the upper echelon here. It makes up half of our remaining field.
Yeah, the only other deck that had multiple copies in the top 8 is Blue-Black Control. Both Blue-Black Control players eliminated in the first round here.
So really cool. We've got a short break to take while the players get seated and ready for their semifinal match, but they're going to be ready pretty quick, and our break isn't that long. So please do stick with us. We'll be back right after these messages.